The arrival at Iron Valley. The transport shuttle descended through thick gray clouds, its hull groaning against atmospheric pressure as Commander Marcus Chen gripped the safety harness. 3 months of faster-than-light travel had brought them to this forgotten corner of human space, where the colony of Iron Valley had gone silent 43 days ago. The mission briefing had been sparse on details, but Chen knew enough to prepare for the worst. Colonies didn't just stop communicating without reason. Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked her tactical display one more time, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced precision. The 24 Marines under Chen's command sat in disciplined silence, their powered armor humming with barely contained energy. Each soldier represented humanity's finest, trained not just in combat but in the art of survival, adaptation, and most importantly, creative problem-solving. These weren't just warriors. They were engineers, medics, and scientists rolled into one lethal package. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, revealing Iron Valley spread below them like a chessboard abandoned mid-game. The colony's prefabricated structures stood intact but eerily quiet, their solar panels still tracking the local sun's movement. No smoke rose from chimneys, no vehicles moved along the carefully planned streets, and no colonists emerged to greet their arrival. Chen's tactical mind immediately cataloged defensive positions, escape routes, and potential ambush sites. Years of combat experience had taught him that silence often preceded storms. Bioscanners are picking up life signs, Sergeant Rodriguez reported from his station, his voice cutting through the cabin's tense atmosphere. But they're strange, not quite human. The readings keep shifting like something's interfering with our equipment. Chen unbuckled his harness and moved to the viewport, his magnetic boots clicking against the deck plating. Below them, something massive and crystalline jutted from the valley's eastern ridge, its surface reflecting light in impossible patterns. The structure hadn't been in any colonial survey, and its architecture defied human engineering principles. Geometric patterns spiraled across its surface, creating optical illusions that made his eyes water. Whatever built this thing understood mathematics and physics on a level that made human science look primitive. The shuttle touched down in the colony's main square, kicking up dust that hadn't been disturbed in weeks. Chen was first out the door, his rifle sweeping across empty windows and doorways. His team spread out in perfect formation, each Marine covering their designated sectors while combat drones buzzed overhead, their sensors painting a real-time tactical map. The colony's emergency beacon still transmitted its automated distress signal, but the message itself had been corrupted, playing backwards in a language that no human throat could produce. They found the first signs of struggle near the administrative building. Blast marks scorched the walls, but the patterns were wrong. Instead of the chaotic spread of human weapons fire, these marks formed precise geometric shapes, as if someone had been using energy weapons to write equations. Chen knelt beside a particularly large scorch mark, running his gloved hand across the surface. The metal had been fused at a molecular level, transformed into something that shouldn't exist according to human materials science. "Commander, you need to see this," Private Walsh called from across the square. She stood beside what had once been the colony's central fountain, now transformed into something else entirely. The water still flowed, but it moved upward in defiance of gravity, forming complex helical patterns before dissipating into mist. At the fountain's base, someone had carved symbols that hurt to look at directly, each line seeming to exist in more dimensions than the human eye could process. Chen's communicator crackled to life with an urgency that made his pulse quicken. "Sir, we've got movement in the crystalline structure. Multiple contacts approaching our position at speed." The team immediately shifted into defensive positions, their training taking over as adrenaline sharpened their senses. Chen positioned himself behind an overturned ground vehicle, his rifle's scope tracking the structure's base. Through the magnification, he saw them clearly for the first time. The beings that emerged weren't hostile invaders, but moved with the desperation of the hunted. The Velkari stood 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in scales that shifted color with emotion. Forearms ended in delicate fingers that looked more suited to playing instruments than wielding weapons. Their faces were angular and sharp, with large eyes that reflected light like a cat's. They wore elaborate robes torn and stained with what might have been blood, though its purple hue suggested alien physiology. The lead figure carried a staff that hummed with barely contained energy, its crystalline head pulsing with an inner light. "Hold your fire," Chen commanded, standing slowly with his weapon lowered but ready. His translation software struggled with the alien's rapid speech, but fragments came through the static. "Danger! Approaching! Need shelter." The swarm comes. The Velkari ambassador, for that's what the elaborate headdress suggested, stumbled forward and collapsed at Chen's feet. Purple blood seeped through tears in its robes, and Chen could see burn marks that looked fresh. Whatever had attacked these beings had done so recently and with devastating effectiveness. The ambassador's 4 hands clutched at Chen's armor, leaving purple streaks as it pulled itself upright. "You are humans." The words came through Chen's translator with surprising clarity. "The warrior species. The ones who survived the Crimson Nebula War?" Chen nodded slowly, helping the alien to its feet while his team maintained their defensive perimeter. "Commander Marcus Chen, Earth Defense Forces. This is our colony. What happened here?" The Velkari's scales shifted to a deep blue that Chen's xenobiology training identified as profound fear. "Your people. They saved us. Hid us in their underground shelters when the swarm scouts came. But the swarm found them anyway. They fought. By the stars, how they fought. Even without military weapons, they held the swarm back for days using mining equipment and improvised explosives." Lieutenant Kim approached with a medical kit, her scanner already analyzing the alien's wounds. "These burns are from acid, Commander. Something with a pH that should have dissolved organic tissue completely. How is this being still alive?" The Velkari ambassador managed something that might have been a smile. "Your colonists. They created a neutralizing agent from mining chemicals. Saved many of my people. They said humans always find a way. Even as they died, they laughed and said humanity would make the swarm regret coming here." Chen felt pride swell in his chest, even as tactical concerns dominated his thoughts. The colonists, civilians with no military training, had held off an alien threat while protecting refugees. They'd done what humans always did when pushed to the brink. They'd adapted, improvised, and overcome. But now the real challenge began. If these swarm creatures had taken out an entire colony of resourceful humans, what chance did his small team have? "How long until the main swarm force arrives?" Chen asked, already running calculations in his head. 7 of your days, perhaps 8 if the gods favor us, the ambassador replied. "My ship, it carries weapons and technology, but we don't have your gift for war. We are artists, philosophers, scientists. Violence is difficult for us." Chen looked at his team, seeing the same determination reflected in their faces that he felt burning in his chest. Humans might be outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an unknown enemy, but they had something no other species possessed: the ability to turn any situation into an advantage. The colony of Iron Valley would become a fortress, and the swarm would learn why humanity had survived every challenge the universe had thrown at them. "Show me everything," Chen commanded. "Your technology, your weapons, everything you know about the swarm. We have 7 days to turn this valley into a death trap." The Velkari's scales shifted to a color Chen hadn't seen before, something between hope and awe. "You truly believe you can stop them?" "The swarm has consumed entire systems." Chen's grin was sharp enough to cut steel. "They've never faced humans defending their home." "Lieutenant Kim, start pulling every piece of mining equipment from the colony. Sergeant Rodriguez, I want an inventory of all chemical stores. Private Walsh, find me every engineer and technician among the Velkari refugees." As his team scattered to their tasks, Chen studied the valley's topography with new eyes. The mountains formed a natural funnel. The colony sat on high ground, and the mining tunnels created an underground network perfect for guerrilla warfare. The swarm might have superior numbers, but humans had something better: the ability to turn disadvantage into victory through sheer stubborn creativity. The Alliance Proposal. The war room had been hastily assembled in the colony's main hall, its walls now covered with tactical displays showing every approach to Iron Valley. Ambassador Thexnil of the Velkari stood at the central holographic projector, his forearms weaving complex patterns that brought up images of devastation. Cities reduced to ash, worlds stripped bare, and ships torn apart like paper. Each image represented another Velkari colony consumed by the swarm. Another million lives lost to the endless hunger. Chen studied the images with the detached analysis of a professional soldier, but his team's reactions ranged from disgust to barely controlled anger. The swarm didn't just destroy, they consumed everything organic, leaving behind only bare rock and metal. Their victims didn't even have the mercy of quick death. The footage showed Velkari citizens being dissolved alive. Their screams cut short as the swarm's acid reduced them to nutrients. The swarm operates on a hive mind principle, Thexnil explained, his translator rendering his melodious language into flat English. Each drone is connected to their queen, who processes information from millions of sources simultaneously. They adapt to any threat within hours, making conventional warfare impossible. Energy weapons become useless after the first encounter. Kinetic weapons fare slightly better, but the swarm simply sends more bodies until ammunition runs out. Sergeant Rodriguez leaned forward, his scarred face set in concentration. What about chemical weapons? Biological agents? Thexanil's scales shifted to a pattern Chen was learning meant frustration. The swarm's biology is unlike anything we've encountered. They can survive in vacuum, in temperatures that would freeze nitrogen, in radiation that would cook most organic life. Chemical weapons are absorbed and analyzed, then neutralized in subsequent generations. We've tried everything. Everything except human ingenuity, Chen interrupted, standing to pace around the hologram. You say they adapt to threats within hours. But what if we don't give them a single threat to adapt to? What if we hit them with something different every time? The Velkari delegates exchanged glances, their scales shifting through a spectrum of colors. Another Velkari, introduced as Science Minister Crealvin, spoke up with obvious skepticism. You speak of tactics we haven't considered, but we are not a primitive species. We have waged war for millennia before humanity even reached the stars. Lieutenant Kim stepped forward, her datapad projecting new information into the hologram. With respect, Minister, your wars followed predictable patterns. Fleet engagements, orbital bombardments, ground assaults with energy weapons. The Velkari way of war is elegant, formulaic. The swarm learned your patterns and exploited them. She pulled up human military history, displaying everything from ancient Roman formations to modern guerrilla warfare. Humans don't fight with elegance. We fight dirty. We use psychology, deception, and most importantly, we never fight the same way twice. Look at our history. We've turned farming equipment into weapons, used weather as an ally, and convinced enemies to defeat themselves through misinformation. The room fell silent as the Velkari absorbed this information. Their species had evolved on a planet where cooperation and artistic expression were survival traits. Their wars had rules, codes of conduct, and ceremonial elements. The human approach to warfare, chaotic and unpredictable, was as alien to them as their technology was to humans. Chen seized the moment to present his plan. The valley has natural choke points here, here, and here, he indicated on the map. We can channel the swarm into kill zones, but not with conventional defenses. I'm talking about using the mining equipment to create collapsing tunnels, redirecting the river to create flood zones, and turning the colony's fusion reactor into the universe's biggest bug zapper. Thexnil's four eyes widened. A gesture Chen had learned indicated extreme surprise. You would destroy your own colony to stop them? We'd destroy the entire planet if it meant stopping an existential threat to humanity, Chen replied without hesitation. But we won't need to. Your technology combined with human tactics will create something the swarm has never encountered. You have energy shields, we have mining explosives. You have precision weapons. We have the willingness to get our hands dirty. Private Walsh had been quietly working at a terminal, and now she projected her findings. Commander, I've been analyzing the Velkari weapons. Their energy matrices are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed for single-target elimination. If we could modify them for area denial instead. Crealvin moved closer to study Walsh's modifications, his scales shifting to bright yellow. This is insane. You're suggesting we overload the containment fields deliberately? The explosion would be devastating but completely unpredictable. Exactly, Walsh grinned. Unpredictable is what we need. The swarm can't adapt to chaos. Chen watched the Velkari delegates struggle with the concept. Their entire civilization was built on order, precision, and predictability. Asking them to embrace chaos was like asking humans to stop breathing. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and the approaching swarm represented extinction for both species. I need to show you something, Chen said, leading the group outside to where his Marines had been busy. In just 6 hours, they'd transformed the colony square into something unrecognizable. Mining lasers had been mounted on improvised turrets, their power systems jerry-rigged to output 10 times their safe levels. Fuel tanks had been buried at strategic points, ready to turn streets into rivers of fire. Most impressively, they'd begun construction on what looked like a mechanical spider the size of a building. "What is that monstrosity?" Thexanil asked, his voice mixing horror and fascination. "That's Private Johnson's baby," Rodriguez explained with pride. She was an engineer before joining the Marines. "It's a mining excavator crossed with a Velkari shield generator and our armor's weapon systems. It shouldn't work according to any rational engineering principle, but Johnson doesn't believe in impossible." As if on cue, the mechanical spider lurched to life, its 8 legs moving with surprising grace. Private Johnson waved from the control cabin, her grin visible even through the reinforced glass. The machine's mining laser swept across a nearby hillside, carving a defensive trench in seconds while its shields flickered to life, creating a protective dome. The Velkari watched in stunned silence as humans and their refugee engineers worked side by side, sharing ideas through gestures and broken translations. Where language failed, mathematics and engineering principles created understanding. A Velkari physicist helped a human marine recalibrate an energy weapon, while a human engineer showed a Velkari artist how to turn sculpting tools into precision-cutting implements. "This is impossible," Krelvin muttered, watching a human medic and a Velkari healer combine their knowledge to create hybrid medical treatments. "Our species think too differently. We shouldn't be able to work together like this." Chen placed a hand on the alien's scaled shoulder, feeling the strange texture through his glove. "That's humanity's real superpower, Minister. We don't just adapt to new situations. We adapt others to work with us. Your precision and our chaos, your technology and our creativity. Together, we're something the swarm has never faced." Thexanil studied the defensive preparations with his 4 eyes, each focusing on different elements simultaneously. "Your plan has merit, Commander, but the swarm outnumbers us thousands to 1. Even with perfect execution, we cannot win through attrition." "We don't need to win through attrition," Chen replied, pulling up a new tactical display. "We need to kill their queen. Cut off the head and the body dies. The swarm drones can't function without their hive mind, but queens never expose themselves unless they believe victory is assured." The war room fell silent as the implications sank in. Chen was suggesting they deliberately appear to lose, to draw the queen into the valley where she could be eliminated. It was a plan that required perfect timing, incredible sacrifice, and luck that bordered on miraculous. "You're asking us to be bait," Thexanil stated, his scales shifting to a deep purple Chen hadn't seen before. "I'm asking you to trust humans to do what we do best," Chen countered. "We've turned certain defeat into victory more times than any species in known space. We've survived plagues that should have killed us, wars that should have ended us, and disasters that should have erased us. Not because we're stronger or smarter, but because we never, ever give up." The Velkari delegates withdrew to discuss among themselves, their musical language filling the air with tones that Chen's translator couldn't parse. He used the time to review defensive preparations with his team, each Marine contributing ideas that ranged from brilliant to insane. That was humanity's way. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. When Thexanil returned, his scales had settled into a pattern of silver and gold that Chen's xenobiology training hadn't covered. "We will follow your lead, Commander Chen. Our species has survived through art and philosophy for millennia, but perhaps it's time we learned the art of war from those who perfected it." Chen extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Thexanil grasped it with 2 of his 4 hands. The alliance was sealed not with treaties or ceremonies, but with a simple handshake between 2 species facing extinction.